Welcome to this video on censorship, bias, and ignorance in the arts and media. I'm Terry Ewell. Music, art, and media have long been subject to censorship in the Western world since the 1600s and even before that time. For instance, in Italy, the famous opera composer Giuseppe Verdi often had to adjust the text of his compositions when the words were seen as a challenge to political rulers in the 1880s. In this course, Professor Engelke has mentioned in his lectures the boycotting of compositions by the German composer Richard Wagner, whose music was embraced by the Nazis and banned in several performances in the 20th century. Just recently, since the invasion of the Ukraine by Russia, Russian musicians have been banned in the USA at the Metropolitan Opera and at Carnegie Hall. Censorship is quite active in the world even today. The 2022 release of the movie Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is currently banned from viewings in China. Although we don't fully know the reason for the ban, one possible explanation is the inclusion of an Epoch Times newspaper box in the movie. The Epoch Times is a publication that is highly critical of the Chinese Communist Party. Censorship occurs in the USA as well as China. In spring 2022, Elon Musk announced his intention to purchase Twitter. He and other libertarians are highly critical of the removal of conservatives such as former President Donald Trump from the Twitter platform. Twitter is only one of many social media platforms to remove users for political or other beliefs. Just this week, as I am making this video, a controversy has emerged around media bias with Vogue magazine. The magazine has featured Democratic presidents and their wives on front covers, but never Republican presidents or their wives. This slight is particularly noticeable due to the fact that only one First Lady, Melania Trump, has ever been internationally recognized as a model and owned a fashion company. How could a magazine that features fashion celebrities not recognize Melania Trump, but provide 3 covers for Michelle Obama, a cover for Vice President Kamala Harris, and a cover for Dr. Jill Biden? Now, do private companies in the USA have a right to restrict or curate the information in their publications? Of course they do. However, you do need to be aware of the bias of the information that you are receiving from those media sources. For instance, during the 2020 election, do you think that viewers of news on CBS and Fox News networks were fully aware of the bias or slant to the news coverage? The Harvard Kennedy School in December 2020 provides interesting research on media coverage in the 2020 presidential election. Here is coverage of CBS and the Fox Corporation. You can see that CBS gave more attention, 68% of the time, to Donald Trump, 32% of the time to Joe Biden. On the Fox News, we've got 56 and 41% attention during the campaign. Now, let's take a look at the positive and negative tone. So this is CBS's general election coverage. So for Biden, it was 89% positive, 11% negative. For Trump, it was 95% negative and 5% positive. So on CBS, clearly there's a skewing of positive towards Biden, negative towards Trump. Well, let's see what happened at Fox News Network. Fox News Network showed about 59% negative for Biden, 41% positive, 58% negative for Trump, and 42% positive. So the Fox network was equally unfavorable towards both candidates there. Well, is there any way for a person to see through media bias and receive news from multiple viewpoints? Yes, there is, and I hope that you will do so. I hope that you will not remain in ignorance. In this course, you should recognize that when examining ethical issues, it is important to understand deeply the differences of viewpoints for and against issues. It's vital to have access to well-informed sources that express multiple vantage points. If you are hearing only one side of an issue, you will be biased in your understanding. Our lives are filled with ethical issues, from the war in the Ukraine to right for life for the unborn to violence in our society, and the list goes on and on. Now, we are fortunate to live in a time in which the internet provides multiple voices and vantage points. However, if you do not avail yourself of the opportunity to learn of differing opinions, you could be cloistered, locked away, or holding onto a distorted and singular world viewpoint. Well, let's view the problem in two ways. Number one, that of world population, and number two, that of belief system. So here I've got a chart of the 10 most populous countries in the world. China is number one. India is not far behind in the number two place. Both have well over 1 billion people. The United States is third, and notice quite a bit less in population, not even a quarter, not even 25% of India's population. Next on the list is Indonesia, and so on and so forth. We move through here. Now, let me ask you, do you have access to news from the most populous countries in the world? If you do not have access to publications or broadcasts that represent the viewpoints of these nations, such as China, India, and Indonesia, then you're simply in the dark and uninformed. These two nations themselves, China and India, they're well over a third of the world population, and their citizens and have a voice in this world as well. Now, let's discuss another chart here. What if we consider religious beliefs? And here are the 11 most popular belief systems. Christianity is the largest, 2.3 billion or so. Islam is the next, almost 2 billion. Next comes secular, non-religious, agnostic, or atheist, which is a bit over 1 billion there. So you can see, however, that the secular viewpoint, the non-religious viewpoint, is about 16% of the world population. But you get to Hinduism, Buddhism, and there's many more belief systems. So about 84% of the world holds to religious beliefs. And this percentage is even higher if you go back in history. Do you consider religious viewpoints in your news sources? The USA News is largely secular, which according to these statistics represent only about 16% of the world population. If reporters who provide your news have an indifferent or even antagonistic view towards religion, then how likely is it that they will portray religious beliefs positively and even provide an understanding for religious motivations? For instance, part of the problem with the news coverage of the Russian invasion of the Ukraine is that the secular news services fail to recognize the religious motivations for the conflict. Secular reporting of religious issues are also a problem with the coverage of the Middle East and other portions of the world. So think about it. Do you view media that advocates for the views of Christians, Muslims, Hindi, and Jews? Are you able to understand the motivations and aspirations of these people throughout the world? You might reply, but what about all of the fake news that will come from these sources? Frankly, I think that fake news is quite informative. I don't want it censored because it more precisely reveals the motivations of the writers than bland reporting. Governmental or biased news organizations will give you important insight into the writer's beliefs and worldviews. Now, I'm not going to recommend news sources here for you, but they are easy to find. Search for news services from the largest nations in the world. Add to that list publications that advocate on behalf of multiple belief systems in the world. If after seeking to find these sources you are having trouble, then of course you can email me for suggestions. So in conclusion, I hope that you have learned one thing in this course, that we are all quite ignorant of the issues. Coming to the news and ethical issues with humility and seeking to better understand the full context will greatly help you and those around you. I hope that you will adopt a lifelong passion for learning and understanding about others. Bye.